Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Intel FutureGen broadcast. Whether you're joining us here live on Twitch at NSE_GG or catching up with the past broadcast on YouTube. I'm Owen. I'm the new social media and community intern here at NSE. And alongside me today, I'm joined by someone with a rich history in tech consultancy and a massively impressive range of previous works. Simon Benson, the director of Immersive Technology at Host Salford, and a man who I hear wears many hats. Simon, how are you doing today?
Good, thanks. Yeah, glad to be here.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you alongside
Thanks.
us here today. And I think before we get really stuck in with the broadcast here today, I think it's important we shed a light on the FutureGen program, the Intel FutureGen program. It's a collaborative project between NSE and Intel where we take 20 students with an interest in the esports and gaming industry for once they graduate from university, and we try to pair them up with industry buddies and try to immerse them in their desired field for their industry moving forwards through private sessions with industry experts, and also try to give them loads of experience through events across the country like ESI and Insomnia as well. So as part of this program, we're also running broadcasts such as what you're seeing in front of you. So if you do like what you see, there's plenty more of it with the Intel FutureGen projects. But kicking off with the broadcast here today, Simon, I think it's clear to me that you have a very impressive list of achievements and interesting projects that you've been working on in the tech industry for many, many years now. And I know that you've put together a presentation for us here today. So just to touch on some of the small bits of those experiences that you've gathered. So I can't wait for you to get stuck in, Simon. And
Sure.
Whenever you're ready, the stage is yours.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, I think, again, turning to the presentation, what I'll try and do is walk everyone through some idea of my journey in, getting into the world of video games and where I got to now and things like that, but also my experience that I might hopefully be able to share with you to give you some ideas about what might work for yourselves and things like, things that I've figured out in my time. So I'll give you all my views, my opinion, and feel free to do it as you will. But I guess getting started, let's start with my journey. So this is me. I've been now in the video games industry for about over 25 years and 30 years in the world of immersive technology, and that'll become apparent what the difference between those two things is in a second. Formerly, I was the PlayStation Immersive Technology Director, and I'm now a specialist game tech technology consultant is how I refer to myself in what I do, which, game tech itself meaning the technology that underpins game creation that's often now used way beyond gaming, but still very relevant. And I get to be able to use my skills learned in that field through that technology. And again, as you mentioned before, I work for Infor Group, but we'll talk a bit more about this later, and Host Salford, and I'll explain all that fits in. But fundamentally, I'm a consultant working for my own company, Talent for Tech. So a bit about my history. This is actually me in the middle of that picture there. You can see back when you used to have to wear shirts and ties to go to work. I started my career at BAE Systems. So formerly, when I was younger, I really liked computers and video games and stuff like that. But that was when getting into video games was quite difficult, as in even to access them. Okay, you could buy a tape-driven computer, let's say at the time, and be a computer consumer. But I was also interested in, how to make them and things. So I did a bit of basic program on computers and stuff like that. But early on, I wanted to get a PC and do some gaming on PC, and then you had to build your own computers to be able to do that. And there was no internet, so you couldn't look it up. You had to buy magazines and books and go to the library and all this kind of stuff. So it made it really hard. But you were that passionate about it, you just did it, and that was really where my excitement in this came from. And I think then I realised when I was at college and things like that I wanted to just study computing, but at the time there was no such thing as gaming courses, so I had to do computer science, which I did at college. And personally, I'm quite heavily dyslexic, so the idea of doing A levels was a challenge. So I did BTech computer science, and then went to college and had to do software engineering. And say had to because I didn't really want to go to university, if I'm honest. Again, I knew I'd struggle with the learning side of it and things like that, and the written side and all the rest of it. But it was the only way. It was quite apparent. It was the only way, if I wanted to be a computer programmer or whatever, it was the only way I could get in. That was the gate. You had to have a degree back then. So that's the path I chose. But my first job, as a result, was at BAE Systems. And I was hired initially as a software engineer to write the fuel software for Eurofighter Typhoon, which I started doing. But I got a graduate program, and that let me move around the organisation. So very quickly, I identified a part of the business, which was the simulators, which looked just like a video game. And you got to do computer graphics and real time this, and haptic this, that, and the other. And it was, what a sweet shop for someone who loves the world of video games. So managed to get into that area and never look back. Became a simulation engineer, and this is just me working with my colleague here, where we created a three-dimensional battlefield back in the 1990s, where you put the 3D glasses on and you could see it all, and the hills and valleys were all there and stuff like that, and things were flying over in real time. And we won an award for that, the highest achievable award that BAE Systems offered, actually, which was the Chairman's Gold Award for Innovation. It also went on to be a Millennium product that went into the Millennium Dome way back in the year 2000. So that was pinnacle of my career there, really, but I loved doing that. It was great. But then while I was there, I met the guys that made Eurofighter Typhoon, the video game, and got to work with them, and obviously was intrigued about the world of video games and how I had all these multi-million-pound computers and this, that, other. They just made the same things but did it on a low-cost gaming PC, and I was really into that. So after a few years at BAE Systems, I went to work for them, basically, took a sideways step, and they were making driving games. So it was actually a really good fit, because they were a simulator game industry, and I came from a real true simulation background. So that was a really good gelling of skills. And I did feel like a bit of a fraud when I entered the games industry, because I thought they were all real hardcore programmers, and I'd done not just programming but some managerial stuff and this and this. I did feel a bit of a fraud, but very quickly got my feet under the table and started as a games programmer on World Rally Championship, and that was before PlayStation 2 was released. So it was like a pre PlayStation. It was about PlayStation 1 era, but making it ready for PlayStation 2's launch. And then went on to make all these other games. So we made lots of World Rally Championship games, MotorStorm, this other. But our company grew from like about 5 of us when I first started, to about 180 people over 5 years. And eventually I was, promoted through that, and I grew with the company, which was a great opportunity, and went on to be the producer overseeing the 180 people, my day-to-day work to deliver games like MotorStorm and things like that. And I held many different roles in terms of executive producer and all this kind of stuff on things like Drive Club VR. But also I'm crediting over 100 different video games now, supporting them, particularly when it comes to immersive aspects like 3D, VR, all those kind of things. So you'll see my name around in quite a few places. So, but these all the ones shown on here are the ones I worked on much more thoroughly, basically, all full life cycle. Then in my career, again, Sony acquired our studio, and I became a technologist within PlayStation itself, and I was one of the pioneers of stereoscopic gaming on PlayStation. So this was PlayStation 3 before VR was a thing. You could actually do, when 3D TV was out and stuff like that, you could do 3D games on PlayStation. That was really successful at the time. And I won one of these awards, a Lumiere Award, which is the equivalent of an Oscar. I think James Cameron got one for making Avatar, and I got one for this 3D gaming on PlayStation, because I was, like I say, a founder member of that. And then from there, I moved on and helped create PlayStation Virtual Reality. So again, a founder member of that product and content line and things like that. And again, won a second Lumiere Award for that, which now I'm one up on James Cameron. So until he gets his next one for Avatar 2, no doubt. And again, that was a great point. And I think because when I was doing video games development, working on launch consoles, I learned so much about what it is to make something for a launch device. And that's where it really helped me understand what we would have to do to make these technologies a success and what infrastructure we need. And that's what got me much more involved in the infrastructure of the world of video games, not just making them and developing the hardware, but deploying them internationally, talking about them, promoting them, the whole shooting match, of everything that orbits consumer entertainment products, devices, whatever that might be. And, and this is coming from someone that initially just set out to sit in front of a computer bashing code into a screen. And all of a sudden you've got this international view of video games ecosystems and things like that. I also invented a lot of tech. I've always been someone to roll up my sleeves. So I've got about 50 patents for inventing different techs in the immersive space, again, all coupled with my journey I've been on. And I do a lot of these sort of presentations, stuff like evangelizing globally about different types of technology. I was the spokesperson for PlayStation VR in Europe when that was around and stuff like that. So I've done all the TV interviews and all that kind of stuff. So, got used to what it's about to present and promote the thing that you're actually making. When you've seen a video game or a part of a video game process or technology or whatever it is through all those different lenses, it really does help to give you this really good, consistent view of what's important in development and things like that. So you see it full life cycle. And it's really interesting picture to hold in your head. So now, as I mentioned, I'm a consultant. So I left the corporate world and set up on my own. So I now run my own consultancy, Talent for Tech, which allows me to work on all sorts of different things, which has been fantastic for me. I've really enjoyed it. Here's a few examples. So I've supported massive corporations like Sky and NBC and Aramco with their strategies and things like that, particularly metaverse focused, and what they need to do there. But I've also worked with very early stage startups, and really cutting edge ones like Wristband, who are doing live performances but in the metaverse and in real life at the same time with the audiences blended together. Blocktopia, that's basically a blockchain metaverse platform, and things like that's been in development, and headset where it's VR immersive training for people who go into dangerous scenarios, like the journalists who have to go into war zones and teaching them how to be safe and things like that. But also the thing that we talk about a lot today is Host, the home of skills and technology, which I am today at Skills City, where we do an awful lot of investment in helping people to produce this game ecosystem, this game tech ecosystem, and help them with their early careers, and help businesses connect to these people and really help boost everything in terms of opportunities in this sector. The one thing I want to talk about a bit was the evolution of digital skills I've seen throughout my career, which is quite interesting as well, and pretty useful insight into where things may go. But first one was game engines. Now we take game engines for granted. If we're going to make something, we're basically picking Unity or Unreal typically. But back in my day, there was no game engines. The earliest thing we saw was actually Havoc, and that was, I think, originally created and announced in year 2000, but again, not something that everyone immediately adopted. And that was just a physics engine. And again, back then in the games industry, there was very much this idea that you had to have cutting edge tech in your studio, therefore you had to pretty much make everything yourselves and own it all yourselves and have it tailored to the hardware and squeeze the most out of the hardware you possibly could. So there was never really any room for letting someone else do something that was considered generic. So really engines took a long time to get any traction. And I remember all the battles that we fought within our studio when I was one that was pushing for the adoption of engines, but there was a lot of resistance on that front, because you're basically gambling with a valuable part of your own company's IP and your underlying technology, that if you don't own your engine anymore or part of it anymore, are you becoming generic and things like that. Whereas now, we have loads and loads of different engines. There's just a few of them here, but there's lots and lots of them, and it's almost, we just focus on being creative now as much as possible, and we pick an engine to make our lives easier. And they're really, really advanced. They're far more advanced. They've got the physics integrated into them now. Whereas in the past, they were all separate bits and bobs, but now they're very comprehensive packages, as you all know. And again, tools, again, back in my day, we only really was basically, is your studio a 3D Studio, Mac Studio, or a Maya Studio? You typically didn't blend the two and give people choices, because you had to commit your tooling to one or the other typically. So you would typically, when you were hiring an artist, you wanted to know how good they were on either of these platforms and tool sets, and that was it. And that was about as complicated as it got when it came to tools. Whereas now there's lots and lots of different tools in addition. And again, at the time, 3D Studio Max and Maya were competitive businesses. They weren't owned by Autodesk, whereas they are now. But now there's free tools as well, whereas back then all these tools were like £3,500 for a license. Now you've got things like Blender, really democratizing access to these tools and things like that. So many, many more tools than I've even listed here by a long shot there are now, but back then there was very few. So it's really evolved quite a lot, and you needed a lot more people to make a game than you do now as well, because of the quality of the tools. IP value is also an interesting one. Things now, you think about video games, back then it was the case that we were always followers, and now I think video games are very much the leaders. You think about The Last of Us now, and now we have a very top-end TV series, and again we've seen movies of video games and all this kind of stuff, and lots of people leveraging video game IP and taking that into other media, whereas in my day it was the other way around. It would only ever be video games would be getting the license for another thing that we did, World War Championship and things like that, which were licensed sports, and we got the license to make the game of them. And we were seeing it almost, games were seems like the secondary thing. It's like a spin-off media, and it was not necessarily taken that seriously, I guess, outside of people like us that are passionate about it. Whereas now it's much more inherent. I think people understand now that video games really are mainstream media. And also again, talking about sports, as I mentioned before, licensed sports and things like that, we make the game of, and that's been a staple for a while. But one really interesting thing about now, I think, and particularly relevant for obviously esports and things, is that actually when you think about it, whereas we've always been a follower of sports, taking licenses, making games out of them, now we've actually created sports out of games, and that's what esports have done. It's created an entire new industry of sporting type, if you like, that's now stealing the market from the people that, with the market for mainstream sports. And that's a real major step forward in terms of opportunity and how the world's really changing. Also, terms like gamified have sprung up. When you think apps that have been gamified, originally the idea of anything being touched by a game was almost seen like, well, no, that's for gamers, and gamers are sort of niche, hardcore people or whatever. Whereas that's very different now. I think the value people see in what they understand game UX to be, the user experience of gaming, is now applied much more broadly to many more segments and is seen a value, and people seek that out and they go, oh, I really need to gamify my thing. I need to make it more fun, more engaging. Where can I get that expertise? And again, these are the people that come into our doors, knocking on our doors saying, please help me with this, because I want the thing that you know about in the world of gaming. I want some of that sprinkled across a much broader picture to make the other things in the world equally as entertaining and as interesting and as aligned with expectation from these audiences that know what they like. And we're seeing that again even in education now, apps in education, things like education itself being gamified to just make it more engaging and more fun, and just to give it that same level of stimulation that we know we can get out of pure entertainment products, but apply that to something that's got more of a function to it as well. And video game status is an interesting one because, like I say, all the way through my career, we were very much second-class citizens in a lot of regards, but when you think about it, I mean, now gaming is the most lucrative entertainment industry by far. This was data from 2019. I'd love to get the latest ones, but fundamentally then you can see that gaming is like 10 times bigger than the music industry and, 5 times bigger than the movie industry. And you can add them two together and it was still bigger, and yet most people wouldn't realize just how significant the gaming industry is comparatively now, and even by value. But by influence, it's probably even bigger than that. And the other thing is, our industry is growing massively, and where the other ones are all in decline. So year on year, it's getting more and more influential. But still, you often find that if you go to talk to someone in a job interview or something, and maybe they're not from a gaming background and it's not a gaming job, and you talk about your career being focused on video games, often they'll look down on that almost, and it's getting a lot better than it was. But once upon a time, if you had a degree in games programming and you went for any other programming job, you wouldn't get it. If you had a games programming degree, they'd say, well, you're not a serious programmer, are you? Of course, because they didn't understand the complexity and the value that went into these products. Now, all that's starting to change a lot more now, but it's still a thing. There's still people out there that, have this old-fashioned stigma about what it means to be, some video games professional in any aspect, whether it be technical, creative, or whatever it might be. But that is definitely changing. So, we're in a much better place than we were. So let's look at some of the skills. So university, the first port of call here. So again, interesting position on university really. So back in my day, again, like I say, there were no such thing as games courses. It was, you went to university, you had to do a core skill, science, humanities subject, or, things like that. And again, I got to do, when I did software engineering was the first year software engineering was running. Before that, it was computer science. They didn't have specialist programming degrees. But now there's much more speciality. But I think that the thing that happened with the world of video games is when the universities started to specialize the degrees, they realized that there was like an attractive element to them. You can, if you say, hey, come and do video games development course, loads of people would sign up because loads of people want to be video games developers, but it wasn't ever throttled by the actual demand in market. It was always like, well, actually, no, we can put this banner up and say, come and do our games course, and we'll get lots of people to come to our university, and they can educate everybody, but then it's like an open market. So there was always this risk of oversupply that, if every university felt that actually, what, if we say we can do games dev courses, we'll get lots of students, then we might end up with a risk of oversupply in industry. It wasn't necessarily managed. So I think that's what initially happened in that regard. But also, again, the first few games courses had this really weird positioning, because certainly me as a recruiter within my game studio, I would actually almost avoid recruiting people initially who've been on a games course, for the reason that these games courses were very, very new and actually seemed a little bit gimmicky, whereas actually people from a more rigorous programming background or arts background or something like that would actually have been, at the time, were seen as preferable. It's very different now, where I think now some of the courses are exceptional, and they are really fit for purpose and great. There's a much broader spectrum now of opportunity out there, but there are still some out there that probably aren't as good as others, just as there are with everything. So it's one of those. It's an interesting landscape to pick from, and hopefully you've all chosen well, and you're on the good quality courses that are out there, giving you great opportunity. One thing about universities as well, I guess, with their courses, it's probably quite difficult for them to keep pace with industry, particularly now. Technology is moving so incredibly quickly, and it actually takes a long time to author a 3-year degree program, and then a long time to get people through it. So you might be looking at 6-year cycle of creating the degree program to actually getting your first batch of students through that, when you think about the several years up front of having to get it approved and this, that, and the other. And it's quite difficult to keep adapting it. So that's an interesting challenge. And again, some universities do that better than others, and things like that. It's a very mixed bag out there. But the key thing now is there are alternatives in the market and things that support the process as well. Back in my day, like I say, if you didn't have a degree, there'd be a pile of CVs with these have got degrees and a pile of CVs that haven't, and the ones without go in the bin. The ones with, they'd look through. It was as simple as that. If you didn't have the degree, they weren't interested. It was the requirement. I think now people are a lot more alert to the idea that what they really want is your skills, and they've got better mechanisms of assessing your skills. So actually it provides better opportunities now for people that maybe aren't cut out for university, or maybe have taken a different path through university, or whatever it might be, or maybe they've not finished university in a couple of years there, but actually still progress with the skills that can be assessed in different ways. So it's not necessarily the same be all and end all that it was, but it's kind of a good thing now. There's more alternatives. But I also say that when you're looking at studios that are looking for high-end skills, particularly technical ones, or tech artists, render programmers, the people that they really want to know really know their stuff. Often they do want to know they've been on a very rigorous course at university, and maybe also got the masters to go along with it, and specialised in a particular field. It's still held in very high regard in industry. So it has changed a lot over the years, but that's kind of my view of where that's all at the moment. And talking about this alternative supplies, this is again the thing Skill City provides, where I am today, in the heart of Media City. And again, this is a national program they do, but they provide the bootcamp format, and it's really interesting to see how this has worked out. And it's used in many different ways. There's certain people that maybe if you're really passionate about video games, for example, and you want to get into that, but you just you struggle to engage with a long batch of education, thinking about 2 years at college, 3 years at university. That can be a lot of time when people just go, look, I can't do that, I'm not that sort of person. So the bootcamp models are quite interesting, where they do maybe 12-week intensive boot camps, which lets you expose what it's like to work in those fields intensively. And again, at Skill City they offer like Unity Developer, Unreal Developer. They do also esports and things that's on the horizon, cloud engineering, all these different things that are very relevant to this whole space of gaming, and the whole world of gaming. But it lets people go through them. You often find it's people maybe they've done the degree but are struggling to get into work. These almost act as a finishing school to say, well, they'll help you be much more attached to businesses. They've got employers waiting on the end of these boot camps, people to pipeline through them, and they guarantee you interviews and things like that. So, they're often a good way to say, well, look, if you've got your degree, but you're still struggling, you can't find your pathway in, they can help you add additional skills on there as well, that are much more aligned with where the current employers are now asking for. Certain things they're often asking for that are very transient. These boot camps are a great way to bolt them in. But equally, if people that aren't university focused people, again, there's other opportunities there to say, well, take this path instead. And there's been a lot of people who've been very successful in getting game related roles or game tech related roles and things like that by coming through other routes. I met a guy the other day who works for Williams Formula One team as their aerodynamics software engineer, and he used to be a policeman who did a 12-week software engineering boot camp, and now he's their software engineer for the Williams Formula One team. And you're like, what an amazing story. So it just shows there's all these alternatives now. People are being much more judged on their capabilities rather than just the path that they took in that regard. So there's contact details here for that, but I'll put that on the end so you've all got that for reference. But if you want to follow up there, student recruitment at infogroup.co.uk, that's where you can register on there for all their information for getting onto their programs. But like I say, I'll leave this on when I've finished this presentation. Work experience is another thing I want to talk about. I think this is really, really important. I think it gives you a massive amount of credibility if you've got work experience of any sort on your CV, but fundamentally, if it's relevant work experience that's relating to the career you want to go into, it adds tons of value. Some critical elements there. So the thing I always find that most employers are most keen on is, and this is where often some graduates that have maybe just gone through university and maybe haven't taken a part-time job or done any of that kind of thing because they've been focused on the study, a lot of employers say, right, we need to know that everyone's worked in a multidisciplinary team. So they often meet a lot of programmers who've never met an artist and a lot of artists who've never met a programmer. And fundamentally, every games business, if you're doing development side of it, you're working hand in hand with these disciplines. So make sure you get the opportunity to work in multidisciplinary teams. If your university doesn't offer it, make your own group, do it in your evenings and spare time, work together on something so you can say, yes, I understand what that's like. I can speak the lingo with them other disciplines, and we know a way how we work together as a team. Agile development is the essence of all development in these creative fields. Again, some people are never exposed to it, and this is the day-to-day working life in studios. So again, make sure you get those skills. Source control, essential. Every business, software development business uses that, including video games companies and stuff like that. So if you're doing the development route, you have to know source control, whether you're an artist or a programmer. Definitely worth knowing. So get things like Git, figure it out. It's fairly easy to use, but get the principles of it really helps you. And basically, office etiquette or work etiquette. People want to know that you can operate and you know how to talk to a boss. To turn up on time. About how to wash your cup in the sink when you've had your brew, whatever. A lot of businesses don't want to be the first people to have to teach you all this kind of stuff. They'd rather get someone who already knows it because it's just one extra thing. So stuff like that. Breaking into the industry, so a big topic. Shame we have to call it breaking in, but there you go. So let's just look at it through the lens of 3 steps. So we know typically the process is CV, portfolio, job interview, maybe technical test in there or whatever, but that's the typical process. So CV, so a lot of CVs look like this. That's not going to work in this industry. What you want to do is make your CV look more like this, because most of us are creative. We work with creative people, whatever. Keep it on one page. I'll go over the list of things in a second, but basically, particularly if you're an artist, show your art in what you do. Show that you can do layout. If this lands on someone's desk compared to that one, which one's going to have most impact? Even if you haven't read them, they've actually got exactly the same information on them. You know what I mean? But one looks massively better than the other, and they look nice and concise and things like that. So here's my little tip on CV stuff. So, and I've seen a lot of CVs, and I still work with people now in terms of getting into the industry. So first of all, your CV's goal is to get an interview, not to get you the job. No one's going to look at your CV and go, right, you're employed. They're going to look at your CV and go, do I want to talk to you? So a bit of intrigue is a good thing here. Think about your audience. These are people who are very busy. They might have 100 CVs to go through. So again, don't waste the time on make it hard for them and stuff like that. So this is where one page is great. If you're an artist, show that you're an artist. If you're not an artist, still think about structure. If you're a programmer and whatever, you're an organizer, you're a manager, you show that you can show information in a useful, easy to consume way. Communication, basically, at the end of the day. Less is more. Don't give them 10 pages and go on about stuff. Keep it concise, because if they are intrigued, they'll want to interview you. You just say, I did this thing, and it's a little bit like just a one-liner, and they're like, ooh, but whatever, it sounds really cool that you made your own game with your mates or something, I want to know more. The only way to know more is to get you to interview. So there you go. So keep it highlights. Avoid negatives. Don't put things in there like, I rate myself on all these different tools. 3D Studio Max, I'm a 4 out of 5. Maya, 0 out of 5. It's like, well, why put that on there? You know what I mean? Don't point out your negatives. Just don't put it on. As simple as that. So keep everything nice and positive and buoyant and things like that, so that it's working to your strengths. It's okay to skip and summarize things. You don't need to say what your GCSEs were or whatever. Don't need to say you even went to school. It's kind of implied if you were being at university. You know what I mean? So only put things on there that are relevant. If you did something very relevant at college, put that on there. If it was just a typical stepping stone to your university, you don't even need to mention it. You know what I mean? Because people will appreciate that. You know, it's kind of like they know what to expect. Link to your portfolio in a digital CV, PDF. Make sure your links works and it's nice and tidy and concise. They can just click on it, so that when they've got your CV up on screen, click, there's my portfolio, brilliant, easy. Keep it relevant to the role. So again, tailor your CV slightly every time. If there's a role that's for an environment artist, or a role that's for a, you know, operational this or manager that, make sure you've tailored it so that comes across that you've considered that and you've brought out the topics that make sense in that regard, and then it fits better. It's a better match. And make sure it matches LinkedIn profile, you know, because people often will do that. They'll cross-reference it. If they're interested in you, they'll look at it, go on your LinkedIn, and if the two things are different, you've got different dates, different statements, and it's clear that no one's not the other, they'll you know, they'll think something suspicious going on there. Don't give them a reason to think that. Portfolio again, best to illustrate the best of your talent is what you're trying to do here. So, you know, just show them what you're capable of. Make sure it's accessible from your CV. Again, less is more. Don't put tons and tons of stuff on there because they haven't got time to sift through it. And you've got to be really critical about things that you do put in there. I always say that you sort of judge between this reference point. The best thing you've got on there, people go, oh, that's the best you can do. But equally, the worst thing that they've got on there, the thing they can see a chink in the armour on and see that you know, you've made a mistake, or you missed a shadow off there, or something's gone wrong there, or whatever, or the video that's not got a very clean edit. They'll think that's the worst you can do, and they'll think you don't know the difference between those two things. They think that's the range of your skill. They kind of go, you clearly didn't notice that video edit was a bit dodgy. So they'll judge you between that. So if you can just filter out the things that have got the weaknesses in it, you're just closing that gap down. And you're, even if there's only ends up being 2 or 3 things on there, if they're really high quality things with hardly any errors in them or faults in them or whatever, brilliant. They'll just go, well, that's a fairly narrow gap. This person's, you know, I can trust them to work within those margins, which is great. Keep it relevant. If you're applying for something that's, you know, clearly a creative role, there should be very creative things in there. If you're doing marketing type things in the esports world, there should be examples of things that, you know, flyers and this that you've made, and social media clips that you've done, or whatever edits that you've made. Again, avoid negatives. And often, if you specifically a 3D artist show you working out, you might say, here's a game ready object I've made, and you can put all them layers on in ArtStation where you can let them swipe and reveal the geometry and textures and stuff like that. They can inquire on it, and that allows them to make a better judgment about you, and shows that you understand the bits that they need to see, basically. But also provide a context. So if it's ArtStation, whatever, or if you're a programmer or whatever, if you've done an event and you're putting videos up there, make sure it's clear when you look at the thing. Don't assume people are going to traverse your entire portfolio. It's a bit like flicking through stuff. They're not going to have a lot of time. So little link that says, this is my video of whatever, and there may be a small paragraph underneath it, but make sure that the thing you can read when it's still in thumbnail form gives you enough information, doesn't run out of text and the important bit's cropped off. Put the important bit at the top so they read that first, and even if they don't click on it, they've read that at the thumbnail level. And make sure the thumbnail is showing the right bit, you know, the impressive bit. Then you click on that, and then there's more information, and it also provides context. So if you're doing game design and you've designed a racing game, you've only done it as a blocked out, the cars are just, you know, boxes, and it's all grey world and stuff like that, but your interesting mechanic is, I don't know, say a certain boost mechanic you've done, make it very clear they shouldn't be judging your art. This is a demonstration of the mechanic, the boost mechanic, in a grey box world, so that people go, all right, so I'm not looking at the art, I'm looking at the mechanic. Great. If you don't put that context there, they might assume that's the best art you can do, and then you might assume that's what you're trying to tell them. So be clear on things like that. Finally, interview. So again, at the interview, if you've got that far, it means they liked your CV, they've liked your portfolio, so you wouldn't be sat there if they don't think they could potentially give you the job. So you've already made a good progress down here. So the clear thing they often now try to do is, first of all, check that you're honest and that everything you've said on your CV and portfolio is probably valid. So they'll ask you some questions about that, things like that, and they may do a test or whatever it may be to resolve that. But then they really just want to get to know you and know that you're going to fit into their company culture, and know that your aspirations align with their aspirations and things like that. You know, it's much more interpersonal, this step now, really, because like I say, your credentials have already been approved. It just need to be validated, and then make sure you're a good fit. So make sure you've prepared, know about their company, do your homework. That's only polite. Make sure you know what you've written in your own CV, so you don't stumble across it if they ask you some questions. don't avoid questions. If they ask you a question, always acknowledge questions, answer them. There's this technique called bridging, which is great. So the thing that you always have to do is, again, you want to be positive as much as possible, or as I mentioned here, keep your negatives innocuous. So if they ask you a question, like they might say, what's your strengths and weaknesses then? Quite a common question, you know, and you go, okay, brilliant. So strengths, no problem. I'm great at this, this, and this. So then you go, oh no, I've got to acknowledge the fact they asked me about my weaknesses, but I don't really want to go to the same level of depth on my weaknesses and go, you know, the worst thing about me is something horrendous. You know, I just can't get up in the morning and often skip work or whatever. You don't want to be saying that because you know you've just written off your job. So always try and pick your negatives that are quite innocuous. You might say, a great one that someone said to me, like, something you often get criticised for in the office. And you're like, oh no, how do I answer that question? And, oh, you know, I sometimes leave the tea bags out on the side, or I don't make a very good cup of tea. You know, innocuous answer. No one's going to be that bothered. Not going to think, you know, you're going to do anything too destructive in their organisation. You're not going to say, oh yeah, well I once leaked this password to someone and someone got access to all your data. You know, that's bad. But keep it innocuous. And again, this bridging technique is all about, if they ask you something negative, think about how you can quickly get to a positive. This is often used in marketing and things like that. So, you know, when I do Q&As for TV, for example, you prepare. If they say to you, oh, like when we did one video game, it was when HD came out and 1080p was the thing. Our game was only 720p, and you kind of, it's a bit of a negative. And they, oh, why come your game is only 720p? And you're like, oh, but if you want to talk about visual quality, you know, yeah, we've got all these effects. We do blur, we do this, that, and other. We've got, you know, loads of particle systems, things going off all over the place. So I acknowledged the question, but very quickly took it from where they started me off to a positive. You know, and that's the thing you need to practice, is you think about all your positives and negatives, and then you get your list of negatives, and you think, how can I quickly get them to a positive? So if they ask me about, say, I'm not very good at, I don't say I'm a programmer, I'm not very good at C++, and they say, oh, what's your C++ skills like? And you go, oh, it's going to be bad. So, but I am very good at C#, say. So I can say, well, actually, yeah, so I've done a little bit of C++, but actually in C#, I've done all this stuff, so I understand the principles of this, that, and the other, and I've done lots of software engineering, and, you know, and see a bridge to something, which, while you've engaged the question. See the talking point in your CV about you as a person. So like, this is where hobby section comes in handy. If you've got an interesting hobby, maybe you do rock climbing or sea kayaking or something like that, put it in there, because what they want is, rather than just talking to you about all your technical stuff and your background and stuff like that, they can put something that's a bit personal and get you talking about something personal. That's when you get a repertoire with them. It's like, you know, you make a bond and they'll, oh yeah, it's mountain, tell me about mountain climbing. Oh, no problem. And you'll be really easy. It'll just flow from you because it's a passion of yours and stuff like that. So things like that tend to work quite well. Most of all, be enthusiastic and be yourself, because if you're not a fit for them, you're not a fit for them, and you wouldn't enjoy it anyway. So just be yourself is the important thing. Remote interviews, this is my Zoom that I do at home, and the thing that I always advise people when doing remote interviews is, think about your background, think about where you're doing it, try and pick a place where there's, you know, the sound's going to be okay, and if you can avoid having to use headphones and covering all your head up with headphones and stuff like that, try and do that. If you've got a decent mic or whatever, light yourself well so it looks like you've made the effort, and tidy up. I need to tidy my office up a bit there, but tidy up. And things like that, so that you make a good impression. It's a bit like in the olden days, you had to, you know, dress up a notch to go to an interview and be smart. If you're doing a remote interview, you need to dress your scene and your lighting a bit, you know what I mean, to make the effort, because that's the only thing you've really got when it comes to remote interviews. And again, career starts, also think about parallel domains. It might be hard sometimes to get directly into your direct field. You might go, look, I want to be an esports person. I want to do all this operational stuff on esports, but you know, there's not many people in my area recruiting for this kind of thing. Well, think about what it's like I did in my career. So esports is basically a digital event. So maybe you get into a marketing path. You know, if you like the social media aspect of it, do a marketing job first, and then take all that to esports and keep doing esports as your hobby in the background. And 2 years in, you'll probably be a senior esports person. They'll be biting your hand off. You know, digital events, there might be places out there that are doing all these things where you can do online metaversey stuff. You know, you maybe do that, and it's the same thing. You're still doing digital event delivery, but in different format, and that might bring you over. You know, there's industrial jobs, conventional jobs like training and this and other. If you're into development, you can use your game engine skills in lots of different places. You can be a freelancer. So there's so many other places where you can go, which means you don't necessarily have to knock on and get through the particular door. You can come at it from a different angle and think about, where do I gain my critical experience so that I can always step sideways. I did step in sideways. It didn't do me any harm. In fact, it was a massive, massive boost, because whereas everyone else of my era who worked in the video games industry could say, yes, I've done video games development, this other. I would say, and I've also done simulation. I worked on one of the first Formula One simulators for a real Formula One team, for example, in my world. That's huge credibility that you can then bring in as a bonus point to say, and now I do it for video games. That's something that a lot of other people don't have, and it makes you unique and makes you even more valuable. So those sideways parallel paths can be a really good opportunity, but it also means you've got more front doors to aim at than just a handful that might be put before you. So I'm not going to go through this because I'm conscious of time, but this is all about where everything's going in the future. It's exciting stuff, but in summary, it's all going to the metaverse, and there's lots of opportunities for all of us in the video games world. Our internet fundamentally is built to replace books, and our future internet is going to be like a shopping mall, and that's what the metaverse is really about. When you think about that, it's all interactive, it's all 3D, it's all like a big network game, all the rest of it, and all of our skills are going to be really, really valuable. I'm going to skip through all this because it just tells you all that. And then I'm going to get to the place where I basically leave up that for information. So if you want any contact details and stuff like that, that's where it all is at. So feel free to make notes of that and get in touch if you're interested in those game tech related boot camps and things like that. Again, we see lots of people who've already got the degrees and looking to add some extra stuff. People can do it through the summer or whatever. It's a great way to add something extra to your bow. And I think fundamentally my sort of parting note on the presentation would be to say, if you're passionate about the world of video games, from whatever path you want to take through that passion is by far the best fuel that will get you through anything. And just immerse yourself in that space and enjoy the passion of it. And whatever happens, there'll always be someone who earns more than you, always be someone who earns less than you probably out there. If you're doing what you like and you're embracing your passion and you turn your passion and your hobby into a job, it never feels like work, and it'll be a better life. It is a great thing. I've really enjoyed what I've done in my career. I've immersed myself in the thing that I love tech, I love games, stuff like that. That's what I've just immersed myself in. And I was sort of working class lad with my parents knew nothing about computers. I got no guidance whatsoever. I just took a chance on it, went for it, and thought, well, I like that, I'll just do that then. And it's been a fantastic journey I've been on, and I'd recommend it to anybody. But that passion, and I think being someone who doesn't just consume but you also create, also think that balance it out. It's hard work when we love games because you could easily sit playing games all your life and stuff like that, but also try and make enough time in your spare time to engage in the creative side of it and the doing side of it, because that's what really differentiates you. And I think particularly the thing I always used to find looking at CVs, I wasn't that interested if someone came to me and said, when I was at university I did this amazing project with my mates and my teacher said it was amazing. It's like, well, yeah, everyone does that. The ones that impressed me were the ones that said, but in my spare time I also did this with this group of people, we made this game in our own time, and that's what impresses me. It's like, wow, you're so obsessed with this space, you can't stop doing it. And if I bring you into my studio, I'm going to have to tell you to go home at the end of the day because you'll be so obsessed with doing this stuff because you're just so passionate about it. They're the people that people really want to employ. So that's enough about me anyway, and my history and my views on things. That's, like I say, from what I've done in my career, they're the interesting things I just want to highlight. And I guess we'll move over to Q&A now, I think.
Well, thanks a lot, Simon. That was honestly such an interesting presentation to listen to, and I think it's really fascinating to hear from people like yourself with real sort of lived experiences, and to see some of those experiences translated in a way that's digestible for some of the viewers at home. I think that was absolutely fantastic. I know you touched a lot about Skills City and Host and the work you're doing there. But before we do dive across to a potential Q&A, is there any social platforms we can find yourself on? Is there anything you sort of wanted to point our viewers towards here today?
I'll definitely say, in this field, I'd definitely recommend LinkedIn is one of the key things for the career side of things. Again, so get yourself a LinkedIn profile. Feel free to reach out to my LinkedIn profile if you want to connect and stuff like that. Like I say, people use that as your living CV in a lot of ways. And there's some really easy ways of filling it with content, because initially when people start LinkedIn, they kind of think, well, there's nothing on there, and they kind of don't look like I've done much. And it's like, well, make it be a CV first, so put all your experience on there, stuff like that. And then every time you go to an event, if you go to an esports event, take your picture in front of the sign of that event and say, hey, had a great day today at this place. And that's content. And over time, you end up with a whole list. If anyone looks at your LinkedIn profile, they go, okay, I get you, you've got your CV here, but look where you've been to all these places, you've done all this stuff. And it's easy to collect that kind of thing and add to your profile. And that acts as a great tool to just show how immersed it's evidencing your passion and your interests in the space, basically, and things like that, so you can use it in those kind of ways. That's the thing that people always say with social media: do one and do it well. And I do LinkedIn. I don't probably do it well, but that's the one I picked. But obviously there's plenty of others out there that you can also focus on. I think artists in particular, often things like Instagram and ArtStation for the CVs is really, really important. Programmers struggle a lot more when it comes to how to present their portfolio, and I think a lot of them tend to gravitate towards a custom website so they can put more specific things on there, and maybe a GitLab repository or something, so they can put samples of the code up there and things like that. But that's a sort of a bit of an insight into some of those things I'd recommend.
Fantastic. I think that's a great way to really wrap up this presentation you've given us here, Simon. But to all of our online viewers, we'll be back again with another Intel FutureGen broadcast live next week on this same channel, NSE_GG. But for our current cohort of Intel FutureGen people, we'll be jumping into a private Q&A session too. So for all of our online viewers, a massive thank you for being here today. I know we've had some thank yous in the chat as well towards you, Simon, as well. So thank you very much. And we'll see you next week.
Pleasure. No problem. Thank you.